Hi, and welcome to TACOS Tuesday, episode 58. So today it's just myself, no Hamish. He will be back next week, so we can have a bit more of a back and forth type conversation, which is a bit easier. In today's episode, we want to preparing for Prime Big Deals Day, which is coming up in October. The dates are October 7th through to October 13th. And so today, what I wanted to do as part of this episode is really take you through how we prepare for these events, what's important, what's not important, and some of the data that you can rely on yourself to do that. So I'm going to share screen with you. I'm going to take you through what a strategy looks like and all of the factors you need to consider when you're looking at Prime Day. So let us dive in. Okay, so hopefully that's visible for you all there. I'm going to walk you through what this is, but basically this is what we would consider a Prime strategy. And the event itself runs for 5 days, and this table that I'm showing you here is grouped into a few different groups. We've got 7 days before the event. So at the top, we've got all the timelines on the different, what we call the different sections. So we've got 7 days before the event, because there is a lead into Prime. We do know that people add to cart before they come into Prime deal. They want to see, are these products going to be on sale? Sometimes you'll find that people will add, 50 products to their cart in preparation for a Prime deal. The second groups, we have the actual Prime days themselves. So we've got the first day, we've got the mid period or the mid days separated into another group, and then we have the last day separated. And then finally, on the far right-hand side, we have the lead out period as well. On the left-hand side, we have observations about every one of these periods, the lead in, first day, lead out, etc. Then we have what our strategy is going to be for those periods of time. We then have what does success look like for us on all of those, because it's not always performance-based, although majority of the time it is. And then what to expect with performance. So this is kind of how we lay out our strategies. And the information you're going to want to use when building this out is really you want to look at last year's data and grab that data to help inform your decision. The key metrics for me that you're going to want to be grabbing is your total revenue, your conversion rate over that period, your ACOS or your ROAS over that period, and your revenue per click. Those four are kind of the key ones that I would use to build out a strategy like this. So the first thing that I'm going to go over is just the observations from previous Prime that we had. Now, again, this is an actual build out for a client of ours. Yours will be obviously unique to you and your how you guys perform, and you'll need to take into consideration the products you had on deal, etc. So the lead in, so shoppers start to engage with the event and to begin to add products to cart in preparation of the event. Last year, in this particular category, we didn't see a large increase in views the week before the event, so likely we won't invest much here. So one of the key things is making sure that you're validating everything, all of your assumptions with data, so that you're not making things up that are not true. Within Amazon's ad console, they do give you this handy feature called brand metrics. It's in your ad console. If you go in there, you can start to look at the category as a whole and do shoppers add products to cart in preparation for Prime deal events. Now, in this particular category, there wasn't a significant uptick, but in other categories, I've seen it be as much as 20%, 30% increase in what we call consideration shoppers. And so looking there and having a look at previous data, so October last year, you can kind of get an idea, not just of yours, but as the category as a whole, is it increasing before the event? And that gives you some confidence to know that people are clicking, adding to cart, getting ready for the event. And that should give you the signal that, okay, I'm going to invest before the event. The strategy for investing in preparation for the event is generally sponsored brand campaigns, which are those banner ads that you'd see. We find those are the best to maximize our ad spend to get maximum engagement on the ASINs that we want to show, rather than having to advertise all of the different products. It kind of gets them introduced to our brand. They'll see our store page and getting them ready for the first day, which is what we really want to take advantage of. You'll see here when it says what does success look like that we haven't included purchases. What success looks like are increasing page views, add to carts, and store visits as the key metrics for us to track as success in this case. So what that means is you will see an increase in your ACOS, which is your advertising cost of sale for anyone who's new to the episode, and your TACOS or your total advertising cost of sale. The podcast is called TACOS Tuesday because it's one of the most important metrics. So you shouldn't be alarmed by those increases, and that's why we build that into this doc, so that we know that that's what we're expecting in that first week. So that's observations, that's the strategy, that's what success looks like for us. And you can get probably a bit more granular here and start to call out like we want to increase of 20% on our page views or whatever it is. For the most part, this is probably as granular as you'll need to go. Depending on how big your catalog and how many brands that you potentially manage. The first day is where it starts to sort of heat up. The first day in this example, this was our best day for Prime last year. We saw revenue increase by 280% on a normal day. And that's an important thing. We tend to benchmark our primes on like what the averages have looked like historically to give us an idea on like what the baseline is. Our conversion rate increased by 20%. Now, not everywhere on every brand does conversion rate increase, and that's an important metric. So you want to know what that is, and you want to know what your benchmark is. Again, your revenue benchmark, your conversion benchmark, and your ACOS benchmark before coming into Prime are going to be important for you working these out. Your ACOS increased by 109%. So that's interesting stat there. So we know what happened to revenue, we know what happened to conversion rate, we know what happened to ACOS. So revenue obviously is revenue. And tells us how much we're growing. Conversion is a metric that helps us understand what we should do with our advertising strategy or our bids. And ACOS is a metric of efficiency. It kind of tells us how far away we got from our objective. In a perfect world, you want your ACOS to be stable. That basically means you've matched your bids with the corresponding conversion rate. So that then informs strategy. So we want to focus on sponsored products. After we've gone out of the lead-in period, we really want to focus on that first day of maximizing all of that increased traffic, those add to carts, those people that have viewed our store but haven't purchased, that might be coming back and being familiar with our brand. So most of our spend goes into sponsored products because we're trying to capture demand at this point. We're now done with trying to build up awareness. Now we're just wanting to capture that awareness that we've gone after. In this case, it had an increased budgets by 200%, which is extreme or seems extreme, but it was off a very low base, which is why that 200% is significant. We have increasing our bids by a minimum of 20%. That's driven by the increase in conversion rate, 20% increase in conversion rate. We've got focusing on our promotional products. Obviously, it makes sense to advertise your promotional products. You probably will have a different strategy for anything that is not on promotion through that period. Then we've got a complete budget allocation after the ad spend for the first day has been spent. So what we mean by this piece is that sometimes you can't make decisions on the next days until you understand how much you spent on that first day. And that's just to kind of understand how much budget you have available and how you can spread that out over the remainder period of time. What does success look like? Revenue increasing by more than 200%. Obviously, we want to do better than last year or as good as last year at the very least. And we want our daily average ACOS to not exceed 30%. So historically, this is a 109% increase, but it was, again, off a very low base from a percentage point of view. Our average ACOS was 30%, so we wanted to maintain that ACOS through the event. So that's maximizing our efficiency while getting the revenue growth that we wanted. What we should expect from performance is a stable ACOS and an increasing TACOS. So the reason that ACOS will stay stable and the TACOS will increase is because the combination of the price drop and the increase spend will increase our TACOS, meaning that ad spend will represent more of our overall revenue in this scenario. And again, that's just because we might sell more units, but the drop in price means we're getting less revenue in the door than we had been. The middle period in this example saw the second best period of time. Revenue increased by 146% during this period. Conversion increased by 17%, so it was actually down on the conversion rate from the first day. ACOS increased by 195%. We decreased bids by 3%. So important thing to note here is that you'll see that we've got increased bids by a minimum of 20% and then decrease here. And generally that's because, like in this case, the conversion rate, we don't want to stack our bid increases on top of each other. So if we increase it for the first day by 20%, we don't then want to increase it again by 17%, which is what the conversion rate increased by during the middle period. We need to take the 20% and minus off the difference between the two conversion rates. So in this case, 20% conversion rate on the first day. During the middle period where people are shopping around a lot more, the conversion rate wasn't as strong. So we actually need to decrease our bids through this period. Now it's a minimum of 3%, but we have got a caveat in here, which basically says unless we are likely to run out of budget before the last day, if this happens, we'll reduce our bids by 15%. So in this case, we don't want to run out of budget on our last day. And so we're very conscious of that. And this is where strategies can become dynamic. So we've built that into our strategy in this case, where we've said, look, we'll decrease our bids by 3% because that's what the conversion rate demands in order for us to maintain efficiency. But if we're going to run out of budget before the end of the period of time, we're going to go down by 15% to make sure that we continue running the budget to the end of the period. And you should have those built into your strategies, contingency plans in case this or that happens. What does success look like? In this case, revenue was only up by 146% on a normal day compared to the preview for the first day being 280%. So revenue increasing by more than 140% on an average day while not exceeding your average ACOS of 35%. Actually, that should be 30%, not 35%. Which is what our average was. Ad spend should reduce during this period, and that's simply because we're reducing our bids. And so generally we'll find that on a daily basis, it's a 5-day period, remember, our ad spend will be lower than our first day. ACOS to remain stable. The last day, in this case, previously when this brand has run, they actually ran out of budget on the last day. And so there's actually a lot less data to show here, and you can see that reflects in the information they've got here. So the last day, the period was our worst performing, but likely mainly because we ran out of budget last prime. Revenue increased by 54% on a normal day, but could have increased by quite a bit more there. We've seen that conversion rate on the last day is generally much higher than the middle period. So this is another reason why we don't want to don't want to run out of budget before the event runs. We're willing to forego budget here in the middle period, these middle 5 days, because we want to maximize the last day, knowing that there's a fear of missing out for most people, which drives that stronger conversion rate. So we've got some kind of very, very, I suppose, conservative expectations around it, but we're very confident that the last day will definitely outperform. Then you've got your lead out period. So once Prime is over, because of the length of this, it is 7 days long, you do find that there is buyer fatigue that kicks in. And you need to account for that, otherwise you will get a big drop off in your ROAS or a big spike in your ACOS as you come out of the Prime event. And this goes for all events. This includes the mid-year Prime event. It also includes Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So this is what we saw though. Performance suffers after the event due to buyer fatigue. Revenue decreased by 29% on a normal day. And conversion dropped by a minimum of 20% outside of Prime. So we're going to lower our bids by a minimum of 20%, and we're going to drop our budgets back to the 200%, back by 200%. So you'll remember we increased them by 200%. We needed that in order to maintain our budgets throughout the event. We now want to go back to what they were previously before the event started, just so that we don't continue to, or we keep them in check, basically, over that period of time. How you'll know whether you're doing a good job is that you should be able to maintain a fairly steady ACOS or ROAS during the event. Now you'll get some fluctuations just of things that you can't predict, but you want to try and keep it as close to that stable ACOS as you can. Obviously, what we expect sales to drop and spend will drop as buyer fatigue kicks in. So we know that that's the expectation. We know that conversion rate dropped off last year. That's what the revenue is telling us. It dropped off by 29%. So we're going to build that into our optimization. At the start of October 14th, we want to drop our bids by 20% to account for that inefficiency that we know has come previously. Now, like I said, this is very different for every brand and that you do this for. So you do it for your brand. It may be that your conversion rate stays pretty stable after the event. In general, depending on what category and how big your discounts are, you probably find I found it most often that conversion rate does drop off after the event, particularly the week after. After a week's gone by, it kind of returns back to a stable amount and pretty stable, steady line. But yeah, like I said, it does depend, and it depends on the types of deals you've been running too. If your deals aren't very big during the event, you might find that the conversion rate stays fairly stable through it. The most important thing is looking at the data and then putting together a strategy based on what you can see in the data. Your bids should really be following your conversion rate or your revenue per click. They're very highly correlated, and yeah, you should keep your bids kind of following along that journey. Again, the way that you'll know if you've done a good job is if your ROAS and your ACOS, despite the increases in traffic and the decreases in conversion rate, if you maintain a fairly stable ROAS or ACOS through that period, that'll give you a good indication whether you kind of hit the mark in regards to performance. So hopefully this was helpful. What I am doing, if anyone wants help building out I think this will go live on Tuesday, 30th of September. So if you want help building one of these, reach out to me. I'm happy to do one with you and plan it out with you and show you what it kind of looks like, because they are a little bit unique, and it always can help to have someone look at it, have another set of eyes look at it to make sure your strategy lines up. Thank you all for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all of those good things. We want to continue to provide value with this podcast. That's why I'm kind of offering to do some of these strategies with people. So reach out if that's something that you're interested in. Please leave comments on any topics you guys want covered, or any different strategies that you guys want us to go over, and we'd be more than happy to do them as well. Thanks for your time, and we will see you on the next episode. Cheers.